Hare Krishna. So in this concluding talk, I will just briefly talk about discouragement and fighting discouragement in our life. So, the Ramayana is itihas. It is a description of events that happened long ago. At the same time, Madhvacharya, in his Vedanta Sutra commentary, explains that the itihasas are not just aitihasic. He says that the itihasas can be understood at three levels. There is the historical or the literal, then there is the ethical, and then there is the metaphorical. So historical or literal means that just hearing the stories of the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, that purifies us. Ek aksharam pumsam mahapatakanashanam. In the Ramayana Stuti it is said that one letter can remove, just reciting that can purify us. So we hear it and we get purified. But along with that, there is a literal level of understanding the Ramayana. Along with that, there is also the ethical level. Ethical level means we understand that there are certain ethical choices that the characters in the Ramayana had to face. And they made certain choices based on the situations they were in. Some of the choices were right, some of the choices were wrong. And by understanding their reasoning, we can also get guidance in terms of principles for facing the ethical challenges that we have in our life. So for example, when Vibhishana, he chose to leave Ravana. Or Ravana, despite good counsel, he tried to abduct Sita. So all these are decisions which they made, and some of the decisions backfired on the people. Some of the decisions were very good. So we learn from them how we should act in our life. So one is, just hear, we'll be purified by hearing. The second is, we hear and understand the ethical principles involved, and we learn principles for applying in our own lives. Although our dilemmas may not be exactly the same, but they are similar. The third, he explains at the metaphorical level. Metaphorical level means that the characters in the Ramayana can represent certain things. Just like we say, Ravana represents lust. So, that just as Ram cut off the heads of Ravana, but their head kept coming back again and again and again. So like that, we may think that we have destroyed lust, but lust keeps coming back again and again. And finally, when Ram hit the arrow in the heart of Ravana, that was where he was killed. So like that, we need to not just destroy the heads of the lust, but we have to remove it at the root. The heart is where the desire stems, and we need to purify the desire. So our acharyas often give some symbolic or metaphorical lessons from the scriptures. Now, Srila Prabhupada cautioned very strongly about metaphorical interpretation because some people use the metaphorical as a substitute for the literal. That means some people feel embarrassed that, oh, Krishna, he asked people to fight. Fighting is so bad. Why would God ask people to fight? Therefore, they say, actually, this Kurukshetra is simply a metaphor. Kurukshetra represents the human body, and the Pandavas are 5, so they are like the good desires within us, and the Kauravas are like bad desires. So they use the metaphorical as a substitute for the literal. And that Srila Prabhupada was against. But the metaphorical as a supplement of the literal is perfectly fine. Prabhupada himself says that, for example, the 6 sons that Kamsa had before that Devaki had, and they were killed by Kamsa, they represent the 6 anarthas. The 6 anarthas are removed from our heart, then the Guru appears, the Balram appeared, and then after that, Krishna appears. So like that, Prabhupada also gives metaphorical explanations at times. So Govindaraj is a prominent commentator in the South Indian tradition of the Ramayana, and he explains that Sita represents the soul. Ravana represents the mind, and Lanka represents the body. So when the soul turns away from God, then the mind captures the soul and traps it in bodily consciousness. Just as when Sita, she was no longer with Ram, then Ravana came and abducted her and trapped her in Lanka. So Lanka is like the body. So when the soul turns away from the Lord, soul has to look for pleasure somewhere. And the mind allures the soul towards pleasure in the body. And that's how we get trapped in bodily consciousness. And when we are trapped in bodily consciousness, so Sita, she remained faithful to Ram. She was constantly waiting for Ram. And Ravana tried various strategies If sometimes some police arrest some criminal or some suspected criminal who might have witnessed something. And in order to break down the criminal, the police use what is called as the good cop, bad cop routine. Good cop means the good cop comes along and says that first the bad cop may come and the bad cop may threaten and beat up threaten to beat or threaten with terrible consequences, may even beat him a little bit. And then the good cop comes along and the good cop says, "Hey, he bet you like this. I didn't know. If I had come, I would have stopped you. But he needs some evidence. So you give him some information, then I'll make sure that he doesn't beat you again." So what happens is, both of them have the same mission, but they adopt different approaches. On one side, the promise of relief. On the other side, the fear of retribution, the fear of pain. By this, they try to break down the witness. So Ravana basically adopted something like a good cop, bad cop routine. So what he did was, he had some of his very deformed, hideous-looking Rakshasis. And they would come and threaten Sita. That, if you don't give yourself to Ravana, then he will kill you. He will eat you up for breakfast. After all, he's a Rakshasa. So, on the other hand, there are also some other Rakshasis. So, for example, Vibhishan was a devotee. And he was a pious person. So, Vibhishan's wife was there. Sharma was there. And then others were there. So, they came there and they befriended Sita. Now, initially, as long as Vibhishan was there, at that time, Vibhishan was with Ravana only. So, at that time, Ravana did not suspect his wife, Vibhishan's wife also. But later on, when Vibhishan went away, his wife was there and Sita and they had become friends. And initially, Ravana had told her that you should allure her to surrender to me, to give herself to me. But they befriended each other, and after they befriended each other, at that time, now Ravana thought, these two are just women, what can they do? So he did not separate them. Let them meet, but they can't do anything. That's what he thought. But as he was trying various ways, he himself came and threatened her that I will kill you if you don't give yourself to me. But Sita was not ready to give in at all. Then finally, Ravana said that her hope lies in Ram. So he says, as long as she hopes that Ram will come to rescue her, she's not going to give herself to me. Therefore, he got one of his demons, his name was Vidyujvala. And he told Vidyujvala to make a form similar to Ram. And he made the form and he brought it in front of Ram, and then he brought it in front of Ravana, and Ravana cut off his head. And then after cutting off the head of that form, so the head was in one hand and the corpse was in the torso was in the other hand. And he marched towards Sita, the Ashok Vatika where Sita was kept, the garden. And then he told her, bragging to her, you said that you are going to, that Ram will come and rescue you. He says, my generals have already gone and killed Ram. They crossed over the ocean, and after crossing over the ocean, they were so tired, they fell asleep at night. And at night, my Prahasta and my army went and they slaughtered all of them. And he tossed Ram's head right in front of her. And he tossed Ram's body in front of her. When Ravana came charging towards her, she was fearful. And when she saw Ram's head fallen in front of her, she was devastated, and crying. Alas, alas. He said, how has this happened? At the time of my marriage, the astrologers told that I would never become a widow. How could Ram have been killed? She looked at it, it just looked exactly like Ram. It's shattered. Now, Sita's overflowing of emotion was so intense that Ravana was a little taken aback for a moment. And then, before he could speak, Sita turned with tears running down her cheeks. He says, what difference does it make now? Whether I live or whether I die? He says that let light a funeral pyre, and on the same pyre that Ram dies, let me also enter over there, let me die. Ravana said, no, this was not what I wanted. So Ravana, he was alarmed. What is happening over here? Actually, Ravana was what in modern psychology you could call as alpha male. So he couldn't countenance the idea that any woman would reject him for some other man. And that's why when he came also, he came to Sita, he did not directly fight with Ram because he had thought that if I fight and kill Ram, Sita will be antagonistic to me. But if I come and proposition her, she will accept her. She will accept me. And he thought even when she did not initially accept, the first thing he did is, okay, I'll abduct her now, but when she sees my wealth, then she will accept. So then as soon as they came to Lanka, he just took her on a tour of Lanka. To show her all the wealth that I have. And he says, all this wealth will be yours. You will be my chief queen. So he just couldn't digest the idea that still Sita was not ready to accept him. And now, when Ram died, he couldn't. Even now she's rejecting me. She's rejecting her own life. So he just didn't know what to do. Now in the meanwhile, actually Ram had already crossed over the ocean, and Ram's soldiers were there outside, and they had launched an attack on Lanka's gates. And the attack was so forceful, Lanka had huge walls. So they had thought we are safe. But the monkeys had climbed right on top of the walls, and they were knocking off the guards and charging into the kingdom. And the commander Prahasta, he immediately called Ravana. He said, there's an emergency, come. Now Ravana just looked at Sita, he just scowled and walked away from there. And he said, he went back and he countered the attack, he said. And then meanwhile, Sita was still devastated, not knowing what to do. And at that time, Vibhishan's wife came over there. And she told her, Sita was devastated. And so Vibhishan's wife, Sharma, embraced her and she said that actually, don't cry, this is all a ruse. Even now, you can hear the charge of Ram's Vanaras attacking Lanka's gates. Ram is right here. Hope is just round the corner for you. Don't lose heart. And then Sita looked, when she spoke this word, Sita became calm, and then she looked at the face, she looked at the body, and she looked careful, and then she noticed that she knew Ram. She said, although he looks very much like Ram, this is not Ram. And then when she realized, then her morale was restored, then she became hopeful again. And then, of course, we know that Ram came and eventually defeated Ravana and rescued her. The point is that just as Ravana tried to break Sita's morale, just as Ravana tried to discourage Sita, similarly, our mind tries to break our morale. Mind creates various real or imaginary or combination of real plus imaginary situations by which it makes us want to, it makes us, what is the point in serving Krishna? What is the point in going on in life? What is the point in fighting on? Just give up. So at that time, when we are faced, now Sita knew at one level that Ram cannot be killed. Sita knew Ram's prowess. She had herself seen how Ram had single-handedly killed so many big demons. But when that sight was brought in front of her, she was overwhelmed. So like that, although we know all the philosophy in the background, but there are times when what we see in front of us, the kind of problems we may face, the kind of pleasure that may allure us in our life, what will happen? By seeing them, we will feel demoralized. We'll feel demoralized. In fact, the whole Bhagavad Gita at one level is actually the conflict between Pratyaksha Praman and Shabda Praman. Now, Arjuna, by seeing the armies on the battlefield, he said, how can I fight? And he lost his morale. But by hearing the Bhagavad Gita, his morale was restored. That is the Shabda Praman. Shabda Praman is not just literally the words of scripture. It is the words of scripture applied in a way that they inspire us, they guide us, they illuminate us. So similarly, by Pratyaksha Praman, by seeing in front of her eyes, Sita lost her heart. But when she heard the truth about Ram's prowess, heard the truth about the real situation there, then her morale was restored. Similarly in our life, if we cannot move around in life with closed eyes. So we have to use Pratyaksha Praman for functioning in this world. But if we over-rely on Pratyaksha Praman, then sooner or later our spiritual determination will be sapped. Our spiritual determination will weaken up. We will say, what is the point of practicing spiritual life? But if we hear Shabda, if we hear from Krishna, hear from Krishna's representatives, then our morale will be restored. So there is the world in general is a place where there are problems. And problems, they make us discouraged. And if our eyes are focused only on the world, then it's only a matter of time when the discouragement will become so much that we'll feel, what is the point of moving on? But if we look beyond the world is Krishna. And Shabda Praman, hearing from scripture, guides our eyes towards the Lord who is beyond the world. Now, looking beyond the world is not rejecting the world, but it is not limiting our vision to the world. So when we look beyond the world to the Lord, then at that time, we understand, yes, Krishna is still in control. And Krishna is still in control, and in due course, he will work things out right. Oh, if we are in a hospital, no, the Bhagavad Gita says that this world is dukkha shashvatam. Now, this has to be carefully understood. That this world is a miserable place does not mean that we all have to be miserable. If you see what this verse focuses, Mama Pete Punarjanma Dukkhalema Shashvatam Napnuvanti Mahatmana Samsiddhim Paramam Gata. Actually, the thrust of this verse is those who become devoted to me, they will attain my abode and they will not come back to this world which is a place of misery. So the thrust of this verse is not that this world is a place of misery. The thrust of this verse is the elevating potency of bhakti to raise us above this world. So when we say this world is a place of misery, what does it mean? It is like a hospital. In a hospital there is sickness. In a hospital there will be suffering. But in a hospital there is also the system in place by which the suffering can be minimized and eventually suffering can be cured. So this world is a place of misery. It's like a hospital. But here the process of dharma, and the process of, our topic is from Dharma to Prema. So the process of dharma is itself a process of progressive treatment. And when we come to the level of prema, then we are discharged from the hospital. Mamapetya punar janma karma cha me divyam evam yovetti tattvataha. When we come to know Krishna in truth, we cannot but be attracted to him. Tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sarjuna. Vitarag bhaya krodha manmaya mahamapashutaha bahavo jnana tapasa puta madbhavamagataha. Puta, they get purified and they attain me, Krishna says. So the process of dharma culminating in prema is the treatment in this world. And to the extent we take the treatment, to that extent our misery gets minimized. If we are sick, we are going to have problems. Even with the best treatment, when we are sick, immediately all problems don't go away. But if you are taking the treatment properly, the pain is managed, the pain is minimized, and the pain is gradually getting cured. So even while practicing dharma, there will be problems in our life. But there is a big difference in the problems that a devotee faces in life and the problem that a non-devotee faces. The difference between a devotee and a non-devotee is in terms of, imagine there are two people in a hospital. One person's disease has not been diagnosed and no treatment is going on. The other person's disease has been diagnosed and the treatment is going on. Both may be in pain right now, but both's destiny is very different. So like that, non-devotees are also having problems, but they don't know what is the cause of the problem. And they don't know what is the solution to the problem. Whereas for us, as sadhakas, we know our self-centered desires, they are the cause of problem. And bhakti purifies our desires. And bhakti restores us to the stage of pure love for Krishna, where we become free from all misery. So as long as we hear Shastra, then we can make sense both of the problematic nature of the world, and even if the best doctor is there, even the best doctor can't make the hospital a happy place. The hospital is the place where they are sick, but the best doctor can help in making sure that the patients get cured quickly. So like that, in this world, Krishna, he doesn't guarantee that there will be no problems in life. But so if a patient doesn't have any vision of the doctor, the patient thinks, I am here and the disease is here. And suddenly, yesterday I had cough, today I have temperature, now tomorrow my body is trembling, day after tomorrow I have headache. What problem is going to come next? I don't know. The patient, if it's only the doctor, if only the patient and the disease, the patient will be miserable. But if the patient knows, yes, I am the patient, I am here, the disease is here, but there is a doctor who is treating this. and who knows what he's doing, who knows how to treat it, then that patient just becomes calm. So like that, if the focus is only we and the world, we and our situation in the world, this problem is coming tomorrow, that problem is coming, then this is happening, that is happening, what is going on? If we think that things should go according to our plan and things don't go according to our plan, we will think everything is crumbling. But if we know, yes, there is Krishna in control. Things may not be going according to my plan, but things are going according to Krishna's plan. And if I just keep practicing bhakti, if I just keep serving Krishna, then eventually there will be restoration of health. There will be the return to happiness. And that when we understand that this world is a place where we will be cured by Krishna's grace. And to the extent we are focused on Krishna, to that extent, even in this world, our miseries decrease. Madashraya katha mishta shunvanti kathayanti tapanti vividhastapa naitan madgata chetasaha. The Bhagavatam 3rd canto, Kapila says that my devotees, when they are absorbed in me, then because their consciousness is absorbed in me, they do not feel the material miseries. Tapanti vidhastapa naitan madgata chetasaha. That just as if say outside it is very cold and we are trembling. We're trembling and shivering, but we come into a room where there's proper heating. Immediately we feel the warmth, we feel the relief, we feel the comfort. Although outside there is heat, but as soon as we come inside the room, we feel relief. Similarly, in this world, there are problems. But if we bring our consciousness to Krishna, it's like entering a room where there's proper heating. So the cold and the misery of this world, that torments us. But as soon as we come to Krishna, as soon as we absorb our consciousness in Krishna, we gain relief, we gain peace, we feel joyful. Dhautatma purushah Krishna padamulam namunchati muktas sarva parikleshah pantha swasharanam yatha. The 2nd canto of the Bhagavatam, the example is given. Suppose a traveler has gone for a long, troubled journey. And after that, finally the traveler comes back home. That feels comfortable, safe, happy. So like that, a devotee knows my consciousness has gone a long, troubled journey in material existence. Now it has come to Krishna's lotus feet. This is home. So I just stay over here, then I will experience the joy, the security, the happiness that is there of home. So the devotee never gives up the lotus feet of Krishna. And by just holding on to the lotus feet of Krishna, by holding on to Krishna's service, Krishna's remembrance, that attachment to Krishna develops strongly, and then eventually the devotee attains Krishna's abode. And Baldev Vidyabhushan in his Govinda Bhashya commentary, in the last verse, anavrittihi shabdat, that is the last verse. So Shabda, scripture, it declares anavrittihi. Anavritti means there is no coming back. There is no coming back. What scripture says is that once we attain Krishna's abode, we will never come back to this world. And Baldev Vidyabhushan raises the question, what is the guarantee of this? He says the guarantee of this is Krishna's love. He says that Krishna who descends from the spiritual world to material world to reclaim the souls. And that is the sole purpose for which he comes from there to here. And if a soul has turned away from this world and has come to him, how will Krishna let that soul ever go away again? Krishna will hold on to that soul, and Krishna will ensure that soul always stays with him. So it is Krishna's love which is our hope in life. Sometimes when we look ahead, when we look at Bhava, Prem, Ruchi, Asakti, we feel, I'm so far away from these advanced stages of bhakti. Will I ever reach those stages? But if we feel discouraged thinking I have so far ahead to go, then at that time we can look back and think how far I have come. If we look at our own lives, say 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we would not have thought we would be practicing bhakti. We would not be thinking that we are in the association of devotees. And we would be living the kind of life we are living. So, actually, we have, by Krishna's grace, already come a long way. Come a long, long way ahead from where we were. And how have we come? Yes, we did practice bhakti. We had our struggles in which we persevered. But it is quite often, it is Krishna's mercy that is dragging us along. Often we say that I'm doing my best, but quite often if we look at ourselves, we are actually doing our least. The least we can do in terms of bhakti so that we can continue as a bhakta. That's what. But still, in spite of our distractions, in spite of our anarthas, Krishna has brought us so far. And that same Lord who has brought us so far, even without much serious effort from our part, that same Lord is there with us and He will take us all the way ahead. And that's why, to the extent we keep our eyes on Krishna, and to that extent, and the way to keep our eyes on Krishna is through hearing Shabda. We keep hearing, we get energized. Our eyes rise beyond this world to Krishna. Our eyes rise beyond the disease to the doctor who is treating the disease. And if we just see the disease, we'll become discouraged. But if we see the doctor, we'll get encouragement. If we focus on the world, there'll be discouragement. But if we focus on Krishna, then there'll be encouragement. Krishna's love for us is unfailing. No matter what happens, He will always be there for us. And He will lead us onwards, ultimately, to the supreme abode, in His own personal abode. Just I'll quickly summarize. I started by talking about how how do we battle discouragement in our life. I talked about the literal, ethical and metaphorical explanations of the scripture. The metaphorical should be a supplement to the literal, not a substitute for the literal. And one metaphorical explanation, as given by Govindaraja, is that the Ravana is like the mind which traps the Sita-like soul in the Lanka-like body. So, when the soul wants to become liberated and attain Krishna, the soul is waiting when the Lord descend, when the Lord appear in my heart and liberate me. So at that time, the mind tries to break the soul's morale. Just as Ravana tried to, good cop, bad cop routine. He used various things to try to somehow break Sita's morale. And just as he used Vidyujvala to create an illusion of Ram, and through that he tried to break her morale. But then when she heard from someone who knew the truth, Tattvadarshi, when she heard, then her illusion dissipated. Similarly, by Pratyaksha Praman, if we focus too much on what we are seeing in the world, then our morale will be lost. But if we hear Shabda Praman, this is Arjuna lost his morale, but by hearing, his morale was restored. So if we hear regularly, then our eyes focus not on the world, but on the Lord who is beyond this world. And that helps us make sense of what is happening in this world. There is suffering in this world, but the suffering of this world is like the suffering that is there in the hospital. With the hospital is under the care of a doctor, the suffering is purposeful. And the patients are being healed. So like that, if we just focus on suffering, we will lose encouragement. But if we focus on Krishna, then we will have confidence that it's whatever is happening. I may have problems, but my problems are of a very different nature from those who are not practicing bhakti, their problems. They are not diagnosed, they are not getting treated. I have already been diagnosed, and I have already been treated properly. So I just have to continue practicing dharma, which culminates in bhakti. And Krishna's love for us has brought us so far. So if we feel discouraged, instead of seeing how far we have to go ahead, we can look at how far we have come. And that same Krishna's love which has brought us so far, it will take us all the way to Him also. So thank you very much. The Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Krishna Bhagwan ki, Shri Ramachandra Bhagwan ki, Gaur Bhaktivedanta ki, Jai Gaur Premanande. Thank you very much. So, yeah. Yes, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Question from the morning class. You were talking about how mind can give so many challenges to us in life. I was wondering if you could explain what is mind, and if otherwise if you don't understand that, it just feels like multiple personality disorder. Mm-hmm. So if you can just explain what exactly is mind and where are these challenges coming from?
So what exactly is the mind? And say there are disorders like say multiple personality disorder. So how are they understandable from the perspective of the mind as understood in our philosophy? See, the mind is best understood like the software program in a computer. So there's a hardware, there's software, and there's a user. So the soul is the user, the mind is the software. Now, this software is programmed and it is also programmable. So by the past choices that we have made, we have created certain impressions. And they are like the programs in the mind. So those programs, just like if we have used a computer repeatedly, then certain programs automatically open up. At startup, only certain programs start off. Or as soon as we open a browser, certain page automatically opens up as the home page. So the way a computer has been used, certain settings become default. So like that, for all of us, based on the way we have acted in the past, certain kind of desire, certain kind of thinking, certain way of behaving, that has become like our default patterns now. So we often do those without thinking itself. Without thinking and without choosing also. Just get chosen for us. Now, not all of these are bad and not all of these are even changeable. So within the mind's programs, there are our desires, which are related with, say, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Matsya, anarthas, which have to be curbed and which have to be cured. But there are also the desires which are related to our varna, to our swabhava. So our Kshatriya nature, Brahmana nature, whatever, different kinds of natures we may have. So that has to be understood and channeled. That doesn't have to be given up. That can't be changed also to a large extent. So Krishna talks about this and he says, Nigraha kim karishyati. What can repression accomplish? This is not referring to he's not saying that, oh, you should not try to control lust or greed or anger like that. He talks in the next verses only that you have to control lust. But Nigraha he talks about, there are certain programmings, that is the way they are. Just like if I have a Apple computer, I cannot make it function like a Windows computer. No, it's a different system. So like that, a Brahmana cannot be made to work like a Vaishya. Or temporarily they may do like that. So in the mind, there is certain programming which is usable in our material life and usable in our spiritual life also. And certain programming which is undesirable, which needs to be countered and which needs to be corrected. So the process of bhakti is a process of purification of the mind. Now purification essentially means correcting the wrong programming. That is what purification means. Now, with respect to multiple personality disorders, it's difficult to say because these sort of disorders, there are different symptoms by which they are diagnosed. And one problem with psychiatry is that psychiatry is not a precise science of the same level as is, say, the science related with other bodily parts. Say, for example, if we have malaria, then there are specific germs, there are tests which can be done to find out these are the germs and this is the cure. But with respect to brain-related problems, there are no germs like that. So there was a survey done in London. They had a person go to 8 different psychiatrists. And he described the same 10 symptoms. And all the 8 psychiatrists gave 8 different diagnoses of disease only. On the same symptoms. Why? Because different psychiatrists emphasize different symptoms. And based on that, which symptom is emphasized, the diagnosis comes out to be different. So that's why psychiatry is not a very precise science. That is not to say that psychiatric treatments may not be required at certain times. If there are some disturbance in the brain functioning, a certain shortage of certain hormones or chemicals, there are certain damage to the brain parts in terms of structural damage, then that may cause some behavioral problems and that may need a structural or a chemical restoration for dealing with. But in general, if somebody has a multiple personality disorder problem, now that could be at one level because of, from the spiritual perspective, that there are examples, there are well-documented examples of a person, say that person was born in France had never been out of France, and suddenly that person starts speaking some African dialect. Now, how could they have known that? So from the Vedic perspective, I understand that in such cases, where the person exhibits knowledge which is just not possible by normal means. And that is a reasonable case for saying that some other person has entered into that person. It's like, as we say, ghosts possess someone. So it could be like a ghost has possessed someone. But we don't have to jump to that conclusion as the first conclusion. Generally speaking, it's not the mind. Does the mind split into two? The mind doesn't split into two. The mind is only one. But sometimes the mind may have very rapidly changing or rapidly or wildly contradictory desires. At one time the mind feels like this, other time the mind feels like that. So when that happens, then that requires, in some ways it can be treated using some medicines, but that is largely because of a result of too much Rajoguna and Tamoguna. So when there's too much Rajoguna and Tamoguna, the mind just runs wild. So as devotees, there are some devotees who are into psychiatry and they offer counseling. And there are some devotees who are trying to work a connection, explaining many of these modern psychiatric problems from the spiritual perspective. But primarily for us, if some devotee faces some mental problems, then we should not be judgmental thinking it's just a weak mind. It can be a weak mind, it can be actually a brain problem also in terms of some structural chemical imbalance in the brain. Whatever be the problem, we should not stigmatize someone. That if they have a problem, then we want to help them, and whatever is the best way to help, that will have to be judged. But just as some people may be physically weak, like that some people may be mentally weak. So it's not a character deficiency. Some people, they just eat a little wrong food and their whole stomach gets upset. Others, they treat their tongue like a conveyor belt. And nothing seems to go wrong. So that is not a serious. That is just the way different bodies are made. So like that, different minds can also be made in different ways. So if some devotees are such that they cannot cope too much pressure, they just crumble when there is too much pressure. We should understand that's the way their mind is, and they need to be guided and engaged accordingly. Krishna doesn't see how much we are doing. Krishna says how much we are doing according to our capacity. Somebody may be doing just like we have that famous story of Hanuman and the squirrel. Hanuman was taking giant boulders and the squirrel was just taking small particles of dust. So if somebody has a limited physical capacity, somebody has limited mental capacity, if they're using that to the fullest, Krishna is pleased by that. So we should never stigmatize anyone who seems to have these problems. But whatever is the best way that they can be helped, they should be encouraged to take that help and continue practicing bhakti. Does it address your question?
Just to that, still trying to understand from the point of mind, is it? Would you just say, is it like just like a repository of the all past activities and the impressions that we've had, or?
Okay. Is the mind just a repository of past impressions? Yes, but the repository we consider it normally to be inactive. It is just something which is there. Yes, that's why I give the example of more of a software program. The program is also unconscious. But the program has, by its own programming, it has some functionality. So now the mind is also unconscious. The mind is not conscious. But because it keeps functioning in a particular way by its default programming, so to understand the mind, we often personify it. The mind is speaking like this. The mind is saying like that. So basically, in our ordinary discourse also we may say, the computer is asking, should we shut down? Actually, the computer is not asking anything. Just that prompt is coming over there. So, but for a conversational sense, we actually say that the computer is asking over there. So just as we personify something which is insentient for a conversational purpose, so like that we personify the mind. The mind is unconscious, but it is not unconscious like gross matter. It is unconscious, but based on the past choices that we have made, it has certain default functionality. And the best way to understand it is through the metaphor of a software. So it is not living, but it is useful to treat it as if it were living, as if it is a separate person, so that we can understand its action and evaluate and respond to its actions appropriately. Does it answer your question?
Okay. So when we're talking about controlling our mind through the intelligence, if you could please define that intelligence as well. Just how does it exactly control the mind?
Okay. So how exactly does the intelligence control the mind? The intelligence is also a part of the software package only. See, the software, because in a fundamental sense, mind, intelligence and ego, they are all subtle matter. And broadly, the subtle matter we can compare to a software. So now, the intelligence is that part of our subtle body that doesn't just act based on impulses. It is capable of seeing long term. It is capable of evaluating. Just like there in the software in our computer, there might be some virus that has come. Now that virus is damaging. But at that same level of software, we can also have an antivirus, which can counter the virus. So the intelligence is like that antivirus program. And to the extent our intelligence is strong, the virus may still be there, but we can counter the virus. So intelligence is also subtle. And intelligence is also something which is, we could say, programmable or changeable. Our intelligence, when we hear more and more scripture, when we study more and more scripture, our intelligence develops. So then, that development means what? The intelligence develops sharper reflexes. So it's like sometimes if we have antivirus program, but it's very slow in acting. So by the time it awakens, the virus has deleted everything also. So like that, we get some temptation and we fall down. Then our intelligence says, hey, what did you do? So if we keep hearing scripture, we say, sharpen your intelligence. Sharpen your intelligence. It means what? The intelligence, our intellectual reflexes become quicker. We start understanding. So control our mind with intelligence means, if we consider, say, the example of a firefighter. Now, say firefighters are trained to fight fire. But first time, if a new firefighter goes and sees a big fire, the firefighter just sees it and freezes. He doesn't know what to do. Such a big fire. There may be a fire hose in the hand, he just drops the fire hose in fright. But as the firefighter becomes trained, now a seasoned firefighter, they may also feel some panic when they see a huge fire. But then their training kicks in. Their training kicks in means what? Very fast they recover and they start, okay, use this hose, attack the fire from there, I'll attack from here, you go there. And they spring into action and they extinguish the fire. So similarly, when the Dushpure in 3.39 Krishna says, desire is like a fire. So when the fire of desire erupts in our consciousness, if our intelligence is not trained, what happened? Just don't know what to do. And just panic. And the fire keeps burning in the meanwhile. But when we say control the mind with the intelligence, that means our intelligence becomes sharpened, the reflexes become right. What should I do? Just chant Hare Krishna. Think of some philosophy. Remember Krishna. And redirect the consciousness towards Krishna. And extinguish the fire. So basically, as our intelligence becomes sharper, the fire will still keep lighting. The desires won't go away immediately. The mind will get agitated. The fires will come. But when the intelligence becomes stronger, then it's like it's not just a virus which can be easily deleted. The virus is there. But the antivirus program, if it springs in quickly, then the virus can't damage much. So like that, for the mind to get purified will take a long time. But for the mind to be controlled, if our intelligence is strong, then our intellectual reflexes become much faster. And as soon as the fire of desire erupts in our consciousness, immediately we douse it with the hose of Krishna consciousness, with the remembrance of Krishna. And that's how by training, we sharpen our intellectual reflexes. And what we know that is the right thing, we do it more quickly. Does it answer your question? Thank you. Any other questions? Yes?
One of the questions, two questions I had, one was the same question coincidentally, so yes, you already answered.
Okay.
The second question was around hearing. So when we go to ISKCON Desire Tree or any other website, there are thousands and thousands of lectures. So since hearing is such an integral part of our development in Krishna consciousness, which impacts all other aspects of bhakti, so how do we prioritize what to hear? Because there is so much of choice. The more the choice sometimes leads to more confusion. Because so many spiritual masters are there, all of them are so highly realized. So how do we prioritize? What are the different aspects we should consider?
Okay. So when there is so much to hear, how do we prioritize what to hear? Yeah, actually it is very important to have some purpose-driven hearing, in the sense that if we have some goal, because otherwise it's just so much ocean of hearing, and sometimes we hear so many good points, but then we hear this and we hear that, and we are not able to apply anything because there's so much to apply also. So if we have some objective, for example, it is best if we can complement the hearing and the reading together. If we are reading a subject and then we hear about that subject, then our appreciation of the subject can become deeper. So actually, I have to say it depends a lot on individual nature. Now, some devotees are inspired by some devotees. So if the primary inspiration is coming from a person, say a spiritual master or some senior devotee inspires us, then just hearing from that person itself may be enough. That's what inspires us. But in some cases, the inspiration from certain people may be there, but our inspiration may also be in terms of understanding things. So that if you want to study a book systematically, then if you see at a temple, we have daily Bhagavatam classes. The Bhagavatam classes are very good in terms of being regularly reminded of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. But the Bhagavatam classes are not exactly Bhagavatam study in and of itself. Because each class is given by a different speaker who goes in different directions. We get their association, we understand their realizations, but we may not go deep into the subject. So if our interest is in studying a particular book, then it's best to find out some lectures which are systematically covering a book. Or if we are interested in understanding a particular concept, say what are the three modes of material nature? Then we can focus on that topic. So one is a book itself. A book may have many topics. The other is a topic itself, which we want to understand. And usually say if we have to give a class on a particular topic, then we may ourselves hear on that topic. And apart from that also, there can be application-related things. So if I'm paddling with a particular anartha, if I want to develop a particular quality, I may hear about that. That's also related to the topic only. But there is this, there is inspirational hearing and there is educational hearing. And the two are not always the same. When we are primarily inspired by some person, by some senior Vaishnava, by a spiritual master, whatever, then just hearing from them inspires us. Even if the content of that hearing may not be very educationally deep or educationally very multifaceted or whatever. So for some others, the primary hearing they want is educational hearing. And we can't legislate this. At our own spiritual life also in different stages, we may feel more motivated, surcharged by different kinds of hearings. So if we make a plan and hear according to the plan, and then afterwards we observe, this worked out well or this did not work out so well, then we can accordingly change. What is our need, whether it is primarily for inspirational hearing or whether it is for educational hearing, that also we will learn ourselves. So when it comes to our own hearing, it's best not to legislate anything. In the temple, when there are programs, we do go for the temple programs, and whenever it's possible for us. But in our own hearing, we can focus primarily on that which gives us the maximum spiritual energy. So after we keep hearing for some time, it's a simple example of this is eating. There are so many different food items, isn't it? How do we decide what to eat? We may try out different things at different times, but over a period of time, we understand, what is suitable for my body, what is good for my diet, what gives me energy, what keeps my health, and then we choose that. There may be initially some experimentation we have to go through before we decide. And even then we may try occasionally some new items. But we don't focus simply on eating new items all the time. We know there has to be some nutrition which has to be eaten. So like that, if we are hearing, there are so many great devotees from whom we can hear. So we can have some regular hearing going on. And within that we may, if we are going to hear for a few hours per week, whatever, then within that we can allocate a little time where we can hear some new speakers. So that we might learn something new also. But that if we have been hearing for a few years, we have been practicing bhakti for a few years, we basically understand what our needs are to a significant extent. Then the kind of hearing that nourishes us, that is the primary hearing we should be doing. Just like in our meal, the primary meal has to be the nourishing food. But along with that, we might find some other items also which may be good, which may be not just tasty, but they may also be good for our health. We might keep finding some things. So we don't have to put a moratorium, no more hearing from anyone else. Just as we don't put a moratorium in eating, but there has to be a balance between regular educational hearing or regular, not necessarily educational, I could say nourishing hearing, whether it is educational or whether it is inspirational, that will vary. But regular nourishing hearing and other exploratory hearing to find out if we can get more nourishment from other sources. And that way, we can gradually find out how to keep ourselves inspired through the hearing. Does it answer the question? Thank you. Hare Krishna. Yes, Mataji.
In the morning you explained about the 6 stages in anartha nivritti. So, which means one has to go through all the 6 stages in that order to come to the next level after anartha nivritti.
Oh, okay. So, in the 6 stages in anartha nivritti, which Madhurya Kandamani talks about, does one has to go through all the 6 stages in that sequence? No, not necessarily. Those are basically, they are analytical stages of how the anarthas may trouble us. They are not necessary that they will come one after the other. So depending on our circumstance, depending on our own mind's frame. So sometimes if we just go to a new place, where we see devotees practicing bhakti in a very different way, then at that time the Vyudhavikalpa may increase more. Hey, maybe I could be here, maybe I could be practicing bhakti like this. At other times, when there has been some big up and down in our life, at that time, there may be ghantarla. That means sometimes we just become lax in our bhakti because there is so much else going on in our life. So it's not necessarily sequential. The essential point is, these are the patterns in which the mind may trouble us. We could put it something like, continuing the example of the virus. Somebody may tell us that these are the kinds of viruses that can that infect the computer. Be on the watch out. So these are the viruses, and when this virus comes up, this is the kind of misbehavior that might come up in the computer. So it's not that the first, second, third, fourth, fifth virus are going to come in a sequence. Any of them may come any time. But once we understand the way the virus attacks, then we can be alert to deal with it. So any of these stages may attack us at different times depending on our situation and our own consciousness at that time. Does that answer the question? Okay, thank you. Yeah. So here there's another question. Is lamenting bad? I've heard that one should lament of the misdoings, the misdeeds that we have done. There is repenting and there is lamenting. They're two different things. Repentance means, again, like I told about learning from the past and lamenting about the past. So in repentance, the focus is that yes, I made a mistake and I should not do it. I feel bad that I did it and I'm not going to do it again. So there are actually few terms associated with it. Lamenting basically it just means feeling sorry for oneself. Why did this happen? Why did I do that? Why? It's lamenting is characterized primarily by living in the past. Whereas repenting is characterized not by recognizing the mistake of the past, but after that, focusing on correcting oneself in the present. So we should definitely repent what we have done. But repentance essentially means that we are not nonchalant. Yeah, it's done. What's the big deal? It's Kali Yuga. Things happen everywhere. Everyone is like this only. It doesn't matter. No, it does matter. But if I've got a wound, it does matter. But if I'm constantly thinking about the wound, that is not going to heal the wound. I have to do something to heal the wound, and I have to take care that I don't repeat the wound. I wound myself again. So similarly, if we have done something wrong, then we should be cautious so that we don't repeat it. And what makes us feel bad, repentance, that's the voice of conscience. So the conscience is to give a metaphor, conscience is the dog that barks when the thief of sin comes to the door of our consciousness. So It's like a dog barks when a thief comes at our door. So like that, if we consider our consciousness like our home. So when a thief of sin comes at the door of our consciousness, conscience is the dog that barks. So if some sinful temptation is coming, or if you're doing something wrong also, there's no barking happening. That means that's a serious problem. Then how will we come to know? So if we don't feel bad at all after doing something wrong, that means we have done the bad thing so many times that our conscience is practically like dead now. That is an alarming thing. So to not feel any concern, not feel any alarm, not feel anything about, to nonchalantly do wrong things, that means our consciousness has been deadened, and that is a serious situation. But no, it is not that we just, the dog keeps barking, dogs keep barking. The point of the dog barking is to not allow the thief to come in. So like that, if we feel bad, what is the result after we feel bad about it? Is that we stop doing the bad thing, we counter it, we do something to strengthen ourselves. Whereas, if we say, to continue that metaphor, when somebody is repenting, somebody is lamenting, a dog is barking, and we also say, why is the dog barking? Why is the dog barking? What to do? The dog is barking. The thief has come. The thief is stealing. Let the thief steal. Oh, the thief has stolen everything. So, if we don't do anything about the problem, that is lamentation. But if we recognize it's a problem, and we do what is in our power to deal with the problem, that is repenting, and that is very good. Yeah. There's a question here.
Prabhuji, this is a question regarding the Apara Dharma and the Sanatana Dharma.
Yeah.
You said when we are practicing the Sanatana Dharma, we tend to lose interest in the Apara Dharma. So we think that only like, because if everything is temporary, material world, everything is temporary. So what is the use of doing the Apara Dharma? So because only the Paro Dharma will give you the benefit for the next life. So for the Apara Dharma will only give the benefit for this life. That's also temporary, and it's not going to give you much happiness. So then devotees become a little bit passive in the Apara Dharma. So what did Krishna say about the Apara Dharma?
Okay. So is it that when we practice bhakti, since paradharma is only going to liberate us, and aparadharma is not going to give us much happiness, so how important is it to do aparadharma? What does Krishna say about this? The aparadharma and paradharma, they are not necessarily entirely unconnected with each other. If we are in a family where some of our family members are devotees, or some of our family members are going to become devotees, may become devotees, then the way we relate with them, there it's a place where aparadharma and paradharma are going to intersect. So similarly, if we are working in a corporate environment, in a company somewhere, the way we behave, it is if we are not doing our job responsibly, and then after that we invite people, please come for a program. They will say, I'll become like you, I don't want to come. So if I'll become irresponsible like you, I don't want to come for a program. So then we are actually doing disservice. So first of all, to think that Prabhupada writes in the seventh chapter that the jurisdiction of Krishna consciousness extends everywhere. That means it is not that our family responsibilities or our professional responsibilities, they have nothing to do with devotion. No, they do affect our devotion. So that's why we talk about the analysis of the difference between paradharma and aparadharma for one main purpose. That is, to not mistakenly equate the two and think that doing the aparadharma itself is enough. I don't have to do any paradharma. So, if someone says that actually, like one part of paradharma is that we should give charity to Krishna. So one time, one devotee, I was at a program. So the congregation devotee was saying, actually my house is a temple, all my family members are devotees. So, we say we should give some donation to Krishna, but all my money is going to Krishna only already. So why should I give any donation? No, that is fine. The problem with this reasoning is that, yes, all our family members may be devotees, but do we see them as devotees first, or do we see them as family members first? Do we remember Krishna first? We do, even if our family is fully devotees, we do need a temple where there are devotees which get remembrance of Krishna. So we cannot confusedly equate aparadharma and paradharma entirely. For that purpose, we separate. Yes, this is my aparadharma and this is my paradharma. And therefore, I should give adequate time, adequate attention to the paradharma activities also. But after the separation, we don't have to constantly keep analyzing. If a mother is taking care of her child, am I doing it? Is this my material duty or is this my spiritual duty? We don't have to worry about that. Prabhupada told us that children are born in the Krishna conscious movement, they are actually Vaikuntha children, special souls that Krishna has sent in our care. So once we are doing our responsibilities, we should make time for direct spiritual activities. But after that, whatever we need to do it wholeheartedly. If we are half-hearted about doing things, we will firstly not do them well. And because many of the responsibilities in our aparadharma, they have to be done anyway. So then we have to spend more time on doing it afterwards. So we needn't have a fragmented vision where we think that Krishna is served only in the temple and only in directly devotional activities. No, Krishna is served in our home, Krishna is served in our profession also. But if I don't serve Krishna directly by going to the temple, by directly associating with devotees, my service attitude, my devotional consciousness will not last. Therefore, I have to do directly paradharma activities. But aparadharma activities, if they are not done, they can create tremendous disruption in our life. And then that disruption will terribly affect our paradharma activities also. So, for example, if some devotee does not follow the state laws, and the devotee gets caught or gets into legal trouble, then legal trouble is such a... The devotee may say, I'm doing everything for Krishna. This is mundane morality only, I don't care for it. But no, we can't do that. Because mundane morality is also important. Sanatana Goswami was a Mahabhagavat, but when he was serving under Nawab Hussain Shah, when the Nawab would come to his house, he would get up and offer all respects to him. Because he was his boss at that time. And we have to do our worldly duties also responsibly. We may say that this will not give me much happiness. Okay, agreed. That it may not give me much happiness, but not doing it will cause a lot of trouble. So, at least from that perspective, we don't want to unnecessarily complicate our material life. So one extreme is where we keep expanding our material activities more and more. That we should not do, but whatever needs to be done, we need to do it well. And we can see, Swakarmana tam abhyarcha siddhim vindati mano. Krishna says, by your work, worship me. So if we have that, if by direct paradharma activities we develop a worshipful mood, and then afterwards when we do the aparadharma activities, we can carry that mood of worship, mood of devotional service into those activities. And do those activities also for Krishna. Okay? Thank you.
One more small question related with the mind. That's very small question. That is, we can realize the mind a lot, but we cannot realize the intelligence. Actually, we can realize the mind is playing a big part in our life because the mind keeps controlling you. Particularly before chanting, we can completely realize the mind. The mind takes control of the life. And then we can make us forget Krishna. But actually, the intelligence is not, we can't realize the intelligence.
Okay. So we can realize the mind, but how can we realize the intelligence? Realizing the mind itself is the intelligence. This is the mind speaking. If I recognize that, that is the intelligence speaking that. Others will not be able to recognize it. So, it's like, say, when I have to understand what is the mind, who is helping me to understand that? That is the intelligence. So, it's not necessary for us to distinctly identify this as the intelligence. It's just the capacity to look at our mind itself is our capacity of intelligence. The capacity, if I get certain feelings, the capacity to evaluate those feelings, that itself is my intelligence. And especially for us, in the sadhana stage, at least initially, intelligence comes primarily from the words of Guru Sadhu Shastra. That's why Krishna says, Smriti Brahmashat Buddhinasho, Buddhinashat Pranashyati. So what he's saying? Smriti, as soon as remembrance is lost, then intelligence is lost. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains in his commentary that here Smriti refers not just to memory, he says Smriti refers to Smriti Shastra. Smriti means what we have heard from Guru Sadhu Shastra in the Puranas and Itihatas. So as soon as we forget the words of Guru Sadhu Shastra, the next stage after that is our intelligence is destroyed. So for us, if we can catch the mind acting, that is the intelligence. And the capacity to catch the mind acting that is enhanced when we hear regularly from Guru Sadhu Shastra. So for all practical purposes, we can say that the words of Guru Sadhu Shastra comprise our intelligence. Okay? Thank you. Yeah.
Haribol Prabhu. I think this is partly covered. You mentioned that the right intent does not guarantee the right action.
Yeah.
So, say when that happens to us, how do we do we still take it that Krishna will make it all right in the end, or will it just like, no, I've stuffed it up, so it's all over? Or how do we feel positive and realize that Krishna will take care of everything, or will he do it, or will he not?
Okay. So the right intent does not guarantee the right action. So if we find that we have made some mistake, then will Krishna take care of things eventually, or how should we look at those mistakes? We have to, Prabhupada would say, your head can be in the sky, but your feet have to be on the ground. That means, if there is a mess in front of us right now, we can focus on what are the practical things that I can do to deal with the mess. Now we say, this is such a big mess, I can't deal with everything. I just can't solve it. Well, don't worry about that. Take one step at a time. If I made a mistake, okay, this is what I can correct, this is what I can correct, this is what I can correct. And gradually, we'll find that we do certain things correct, we correct certain things, and Krishna will arrange for correcting the other things. So having a head in the cloud means having faith that Krishna will take care. Having feet on the ground means doing practical things to take care of us. It is not that when we say Krishna will take care, one way Krishna takes care is also by giving us the intelligence to take care. So if I don't use my intelligence and say Krishna will take care, then actually I am rejecting one of the ways in which Krishna will take care. So when we make mistakes, we need to do both things. That whatever we can practically do to correct the mistakes, we do that. And beyond that, if there are things which are too big, which are not correctable for us, we depend on Krishna for them. Okay, when Satsarup Maharaj once, he was supposed to send a letter to one devotee, and that he was supposed to attach another letter. So, which Prabhupada attended to some other devotee, but he forgot to attach that letter. And then that devotee wrote back and said that, Prabhupada, I did not get this letter. Prabhupada asked him, where is this letter? He said, I forgot to send it. Satsarup Maharaj said, Prabhupada said, how could you forget? Did you not read that I had said that this has to be attached? This will be attached? He says, yes, Prabhupada, I forgot. And then he says, how could you have forgotten? So now Satsarup was very young at that time, maybe 20, 25 or something like that. He says, Prabhupada seemed to be so upset. He just started crying over there. And Prabhupada did not pay any attention. This is, how could you forget? Fine, he just couldn't tolerate it. He just apologized to Prabhupada and walked away. And he started thinking, what should I do? He thought about it, and he said, Prabhupada is angry with me. My whole life is for pleasing Prabhupada. He's angry. What should I do? Then he calmed down, he prayed, and then he went back to Prabhupada. He said, Prabhupada, I'll write a letter to him saying that it was my mistake, because of which I was supposed to enclose the letter, but I have not enclosed it. And he says, I've also got the letter, I'll enclose it, and I'll send it to him. And he said he'll do that. Prabhupada immediately, he was so happy. He smiled, and he says, Prabhupada never referred to that again afterwards also. That means Prabhupada did not like just crying and breaking down when you commit mistakes. Okay, if a mistake has been committed, apologize for that, and then make amends for that. So, once we do that, that's all. We don't have to live too much in the past worrying. And of course, sometimes things may not be entirely amendable, but whatever amends we can make, if we make that, then that is good enough. And if people are understanding, they will also see that we had no bad intention. And if a mistake has happened, we are truly regretting it, and we are doing what we can to make amends for it. So apologizing and amending, that is the best way to move forward from mistakes. Okay, thank you. Yeah. So I have seen in devotee circles, we don't have very close relationships. And after spending quite a few years in devotional service, sometimes we feel as if we want to confide something, we should confide to our non-devotee friends and not to our devotee friends. So how can we develop close relationships among devotees? See, there is no need to demonize non-devotees. That means it is not something wrong for a devotee to have non-devotee friends. It is just that while we are associating with non-devotees, we should not take their non-devotional values. So it's not that we cannot, there is a devotional boundary, there is a devotee, there are non-devotees. But just the practice, when we talk about devotee, normally what do we mean? We mean chanting Hare Krishna, coming to the temple. Now these in and of itself, they do not immediately, necessarily guarantee a good character. they should, by the process of practicing bhakti, one should develop a good character. But people may be chanting just ritualistically. People may have very deep conditionings from the past. Or people may right now be under pressure. So it's not that just because somebody is a devotee, that means that person is a very good person. And just because somebody is a non-devotee, that means he's a very bad person. He or she is a very bad person. It doesn't work like that. So if we are living in society, if we are living in a particular community, if we are working in a particular job, if we have friends over there, that is perfectly fine. The important thing is that we should not imbibe their non-devotional values. That we have to be cautious while dealing with them. But as far as developing close relationship with devotees is concerned, so now if it's a matter of confiding, it's a matter of what the issue is. If it's a professional problem in a professional setting, a devotee may not be able to help over there. And that time if you want to confide with some professional friend for dealing with it, that's perfectly fine. But if it's especially, there are emotional issues which we have. There is a practical problem, say, if my computer is not working, and I consult somebody and tell him all these problems the computer has given me. By talking about that, that computer is quite external to us. It's not that I'm going to develop a heart-to-heart friendship with that person. That's a functional relationship. So, for the purpose of, we need to have functional relationships with whoever we are having functions in this world. Now, but if we have personal issues, emotional issues, at that time, if we start connecting, sharing that with non-devotees, then they will have their own emotional values. And then they will try to offer us some solution, some counsel, based on their emotional values. And then their emotional values, their moral values, and that can create a lot of problems. So if we find that we don't have close relationship with devotees, there can be two main reasons for this. One is that either we have not been able to find the right devotee circle, or right people within the devotee circle, or it is that we have been too judgmental and we have pushed devotees away. That's why devotees are also pushing us away. Like once I was giving a class, and when we are practicing bhakti, we have to tolerate many things. I was talking about tolerance. So he says, what is it that we have to tolerate? So one devotee raised hand. Yes, we have to tolerate devotees. So I said, yes, this is a good realization that we have to tolerate devotees. But after we advance a little more, we will realize that devotees are tolerating us. So, material existence is to some extent, even when you're practicing bhakti, it requires a certain amount of mutual tolerance. So, it's possible that sometimes we may be too judgmental in the past. We may have done some things by which we have pushed devotees away. And because of that, devotees also don't want to come too close to us. Because if they open our heart and we just speak too much harshly, then the relationship will get scarred. That's why they may not come close to us. Otherwise, it's also possible that we have not found a like-minded association. So when you talk about close relationships, we cannot develop close relationship with too many devotees. Even if we have one or two devotees with whom we can open our heart, then that is good enough. And if we find one or two devotees like that with whom we can connect, we need to take time out, to spend time, to invest in that relationship. Relationships are like trees. We have to spend a lot first in planting the tree, in nourishing the tree, and after that it grows and gives us shades. So if you find that with some devotees, I can really connect with this devotee, then we need to spend time. So whatever way we can spend time, we have to create that time and create that energy and connect with them. And then if we are available for them, they will be available for us. So basically, if it is happening that we are finding that there is not close relationship between devotees, there is not much point in making a general statement like that. Yes, there may be that there are not close relationship between devotees, but what can we do to deal with that situation? We find out some devotees and we set an example of trying to develop a close relationship. And then others will follow suit also. Relatively speaking, there are two forces which act in the devotee community. One is that we are all devotees and we are meant to be servants and we are meant to serve each other. That is one force which can, in a very strong and very nice way, bring devotees together. But it is another force another factor or force we could say, that we have to follow certain standards. And if we focus on the standards, then we become quite judgmental. Hey, this person is a loose devotee. This person is like this. This person is like that. This person is like that. Now, quite often if you see, as soon as we meet a devotee, our mind passes a comment about that devotee. No, he's lazy, he's judgmental, he's critical, backbiting. So many things like that, the mind just keeps coming up. So now, even if we never speak these things, there are subtle ways in which people can make out that this person is not really having a very positive opinion about me. So people also keep a distance. So if sometimes we give the standards more importance than the service attitude, then that also creates a lot of distance among devotees. So the standards are important, but the standards are something which we should take for raising ourselves up. What happens is, in every community, for that matter in every family, there are ego battles. And what happens is, our spiritual standards sometimes become like weapons for beating others in the ego battle. I am following so strictly, you are fallen. People do not say that so bluntly. So, because of that, the service attitude which is there, by which we are meant to relate with each other and come close to each other, that gets sabotaged by the judgmentality which comes because of standards. So, for example, now some devotee has some problem, some family problem, some personal problem, whatever. The devotee has had some battle with anartha and is getting weak or is falling down or whatever. Now, that means that devotee is like a wounded soldier. If a soldier is wounded, that soldier needs to be sent to help to go to the hospital. But as soon as the soldier gets wounded, we take him to a court and make him stand as a convict in the court. How did you do this? What were you thinking? Why were you doing this? So when if somebody has some problems, what happens is, instead of helping them, recognizing that they are weak, today they have fallen, tomorrow I may fall. So we need to help each other. But instead of helping each other to go to someone to go to the hospital, we take them to court and convict them. Then how can people have trust? Once a person is in a devotee community, already they are hearing the philosophy, already they know what the standards are. And if they are struggling to follow the standards, they don't need to be just given a lecture on the standards. So, there's no point in judging them for not following the standards, whatever it is. So, people watch. If one person is judged and judged very strongly and condemned or labeled in a particular way for some problem, then others also become apprehensive about opening up. So we have to subordinate. We have to understand that the standards are important, but the standards are meant to help everyone rise. The standards are not meant to judge everyone. Our primary mode of relationship with everyone is that we want to serve them, we want to assist them. And as a matter of assisting them, yes, we have some standards. But if that standards become the primary thing by which we judge, then the relationships cannot be maintained very much. So overall, rather than making a blanket statement about how relationships are in a community, we can focus on trying to ourselves change and try to develop good relationships. And if we do that, we may say that instead of don't ask for a friend like Vidura, be a friend like Vidura. Vidura was in spite of Dhritarashtra rebuffing him so many times, Vidura is always there to help him. So rather than asking, I'm in trouble, there's no friend like Vidura to come and help me. But we try to be like a friend like Vidura. And if we are like a friend like that, at other times, others will be friends to us. And that way, the closer relationships between devotees can be built. So why we may feel about confiding with non-devotees is because we may feel that they are not going to be judgmental like devotees are. But we should know that they are also judgmental, not about a specific lapse in spiritual standards. They may well be judgmental about the whole spiritual process only. And that judgmentality is also going to affect us. And that might affect our spiritual life much more damagingly. So therefore, we cannot avoid danger entirely when we share our hearts. But what we can do is, we can create a background, create a ground of relative safety where we can slowly open our hearts. And we can observe, just like if some unknown stranger comes to our house, we open the door a little and see who is there. We talk a little, look at the person, try to recognize, and then we open the door more. So like that we can start by confiding a little bit and see how the other person reacts. And gradually, as there is proper reciprocation, we can open our heart more and develop relationships. Okay, thank you. Any other question? Yeah.
So we were just talking about the intelligence controlling the mind. My question is, during creation, we see that how mind is originally in the mode of goodness and intelligence is in the mode of passion. So how do we understand that?
So the mind is said to be in the mode of goodness. And intelligence is said to be in the mode of passion. Why is that? See,
how does mind be controlled by intelligence?
How can the mind be controlled by the intelligence? That's true. See, that's primarily the process of creation that is being talked about. There are many different explanations given for this. I'll give my understanding over here. The point is that if we look at it from the functional perspective, there it's primarily material existence being talked about. And there is material intelligence and there is spiritual intelligence. The two are not necessarily the same. Material intelligence has many features, but we could say in simple terms, material intelligence is information processing capacity. Like sometimes we may say that some people are brilliant in terms of, say, mathematics or physics or computer programming or whatever. At the same time, they may be smoking or drinking, and they may be taking themselves to a quick grave. So why is that? See, they have the capacity to crunch numbers, but they don't have the capacity to discriminate, to discern the short term, the long term, the material, the spiritual. So all intelligence is not the same. So in that particular point, when the intelligence is talked about, that is material intelligence. So goodness is connected with passion. Goodness is connected with maintenance, and passion is connected with creation. So the mind in the material world maintains our material existence. The mind maintains the status quo. And the intelligence, the material intelligence, it creates newer and newer ways to enjoy material nature. So in that sense, now if you see most of technology today, it is used for newer and newer ways of sense gratification. So what is happening over here is, invention of technology requires intelligence. But that intelligence is used in the service of the mind. That intelligence is not used to control the mind. So the mind is said to be in goodness because the mind maintains the status quo of material existence. And the material intelligence expands material existence by coming up with new schemes for material enjoyment. And that's how the material intelligence is considered to be in the mode of passion. The material intelligence is considered to be in the mode of passion and the mind in the mode of goodness. But spiritual intelligence is the intelligence we get by the mercy of Krishna through Guru Sadhu Shastra, that is of a significantly different category. The material intelligence can be used in spiritual services also. Just like if somebody has got good information processing capacity, they can memorize shlokas, they can analyze concepts, and they can study and teach nicely. That is okay. But material intelligence and spiritual intelligence, they are not necessarily the same thing. So material intelligence is in the mode of passion, spiritual intelligence is transcendental. And the mind, because it maintains material existence, it is said to be in the mode of goodness. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Prabhu. We have two questions here.
Prabhuji, yesterday we were discussing that karma and deva and kala produces the result that we get. So karma is within our control. So what determines, what role does deva play in determining the result that we get? And in the example of the farmer, what would determine whether the rain falls in the field of the farmer? Is it also based on the karma itself, or is it based on something else?
Okay. So for getting the phala, we need karma, daiva and kala. So what exactly determines the daiva? Actually, daiva is determined by our past karma. Destiny is basically an accumulation of our past karma. Whatever karma, past means not just in previous life, many past lives it might be there. All that is accumulated together as our destiny. And so in that sense, we are the creators of our destiny. But we are not the creators of our immediate destiny in the sense that we cannot determine or change everything that is going to happen in our future. But what we do is going to change our future in a small or a big way. So that whatever happens in our life, that is destiny, but that is also a reaction to, that is also a manifestation of the reactions to our past karma. Does that answer your question?
So is there any difference between karma and daiva then?
Is there any difference between karma and daiva? I explained yesterday. I talked about the 4 meanings of karma, and I told the second meaning is essentially equivalent to destiny, the reaction to past karma. But destiny is basically, it is not just the past karma coming down like a big lump upon us. It comes in a particular way. That is karmana daivanetrena. So under the divine supervision, we get the particular reaction, different reactions at different times. Okay? Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. The question has got 2 parts basically. The first part is how integral is our sense of gratitude to Krishna in our spiritual life. The second part is
How to cultivate or what?
no, the importance of the sense of gratitude in our spiritual consciousness. And the second part is in the same context. Can you just give us some tips and advice as to how we can actually practically remind ourselves of all the things that He has done for us, so we can always keep that in mind and moving forward.
Okay. What is the importance of gratitude in bhakti, and how can we develop gratitude? How can we remind ourselves of the importance of gratitude? Actually, suppose say you have a child, and that child is always dissatisfied with whatever you do for him. That will not be a very pleasing relationship. We give one thing to the child and says, you did not give me that toy, you did not give me this, you did not give me that, you did not give me that. Then it will be quite an unpleasant or strained relationship. So Krishna is our parent, we are his child. So if we don't have gratitude, then we'll have the opposite of gratitude. That is discontent, dissatisfaction. And if always we are dissatisfied, oh, this has not happened, that has not happened, this is not working, this is not worked out, this is not there in my life, then we cannot very pleasingly relate with Krishna. So gratitude enables us to create a basic platform of amicability or pleasantness in our relationship with Krishna. And we say we have to remember Krishna, but it is anukulyena Krishna anushilanam. I have to remember Krishna in a way that is pleasing to him. So there are 2 different things which are involved over here. One is remembering Krishna, the person himself, and the second is remembering what this person Krishna has done for me. So now you cannot artificially segregate the 2. But still, for example, when we hear Krishna's pastimes, now we may not constantly be thinking, what has Krishna done for me? Krishna came and rescued Draupadi, Krishna came and accepted Vibhishan, Ram accepted Vibhishan. What has Krishna done for me? We may not necessarily be thinking like that, we're just thinking about Krishna. And that itself is purifying. And that hearing about Krishna is good. But we also want to develop a personal relationship with Krishna. And then we want to connect with Krishna, so that gratitude is important in taking Krishna or in raising our relationship with Krishna from the level of just a hero in entertaining stories. And if you just hear Krishna's pastime, you think, okay, nice, there is Superman, there is Batman, like that there is Krishna. Nice stories. But we want to have a personal relationship with Krishna. So, gratitude creates a basic platform of pleasantness when we are remembering Krishna in our personal relationship with us. And for developing gratitude, one of the most important things to focus on is on what we have. The whole advertising industry today focuses on showing us all that we don't have. In fact, they say that for the consumer economy, consumer dissatisfaction is the fuel. To the extent consumers are dissatisfied, they'll purchase new things. And that's how the economy will move on. But that's an unsustainable model. If you want to be satisfied, we'll never be satisfied if we just expose ourselves to the materialistic propaganda of the world. So minimizing that exposure, so we don't focus so much on seeing what we don't have, but we focus on seeing what we have. And seeing what we have also means, with respect to whatever we have in spiritual life, we need to appreciate what we have. The father may give say a will to the child, where then after the child becomes 18, the child is going to get say $1 million. But the child just looks at his paper. What is this paper? What is the value of it? The child doesn't appreciate it because the child doesn't understand what it is. So like that, Krishna gives us many spiritual gifts, but if we don't appreciate what he has given us, then we won't value them. So for appreciating them, we need to hear the philosophy. And if we look at our life, there are things that are wrong in our life, and there are things that are right. The mind by default goes towards the things that are wrong and makes us dissatisfied. So we need to consciously go towards the things that are right and remind ourselves of them. And that's why if we consciously sit down, if you want to cultivate gratitude, consciously sitting down and listing, what are the things I'm grateful for in my life? And then when we don't feel gratitude, we look back and read it. Because there are times when I was talking earlier about the spikes of the mind. So the mind goes into negative feelings. At that time, it's like our intelligence becomes paralyzed. It doesn't work. That's why if at that time we have already written down something, then we can read that. Yeah, it's true. When the mind is saying like this, you don't have this, you don't have this, you don't have this. What is? But I have so many other things. We read that and we strengthen our intelligence at that time. That way, by writing down what are the things that we are thankful for, and hearing so that we understand that what all we have to be thankful for. The two things are there. Whatever we're thankful for, we need to remember ourselves, remind ourselves of that. And other things, they are valuable, but the value we don't realize. So by hearing about it, we start appreciating the value. And a very important thing for gratitude is monitoring our level of expectation. If I come to a program and I expect that there is going to be a 12-course feast after the program, and if there are only 6 items over there, I'll feel dissatisfied. But if at that time I just think, there are so many people who every night they go to sleep starving with an empty stomach. If I think at that time, then, 6-course feast is a big thing. It's wonderful. So, to cultivate satisfaction, we need to regulate our expectation. So, gratitude comes when we don't go into life with big expectations. If we have too big expectations of everything, then we'll never be satisfied. So, by monitoring our expectations, by listing what all we are thankful for, and by hearing so that we can appreciate what are the things that we don't have appreciation right now for, by that we can cultivate gratitude. Okay? Thank you.
There are 3 kinds of speakers. When you go to a lecture, I found when you go to some person's lectures, you go, listen and go home. To some person's lectures, when you go with a notebook. Besides listening, you go with a notebook. But when you come to Chaitanya Charan Prabhu's lectures, you go with a notebook plus a dictionary. Thank you for that.
I was not sure whether that was a compliment.